In this video I will talk about natural aspirated, turbocharged and supercharged engines. And it will also provide an alternative. So what's the difference? Naturally aspirated engines suck air in, wherein turbocharged and supercharged engines get air forced in. So in an artificial way, and therefore also naturally aspirated engines are called naturally aspirated. So they get their breathing in a natural way. A supercharger is an amplifier that is using the engine to get up to speed, and then with the speed it has, it feeds again the engine, and the turbocharger is fed off by the exhaust air, which then that comes from the engine, and then again feeds new air force into the engine. So this seems to the same thing, but it's a little bit different because the exhaled air, the exhaust air, is a waste product, whereas the supercharger puts some drain on the engine itself. So this, for example, results that turbocharger will reduce the fuel consumption. So as I was saying, turbocharger will reduce fuel consumption as compared to the supercharger. Because the supercharger to work, it already needs to drain power from the engine, because it doesn't use that waste product. Goedemorgen. There's also something else. If the same engine is producing 200 horsepower in a supercharged one, a turbocharged or a naturally aspirated engine, the natural aspirated engine needs to have many a rev, so high revs to get to its power, whereas the turbocharged and supercharged engine can have it in a far. Hoi. Kom eens kijken. Hey. In a far lower power band. Also, the supercharger will express its power in the lowest power band, and then will gradually fade away, whereas the turbocharger can also build up power for the high revs. This means that for example, a racing application, the turbocharged engine will offer the most horsepower and newton meters at the peak of the power band, and this is less extreme than the horsepower configuration with the same 200 horsepower that we explained in natural aspirated engine. The natural aspirated engine needs to rev to the stratospheres to get to that high horsepower. If they have the same cubic inches dimensions. So for example, if that's a 1.6 turbocharged, 1.6 naturally aspirated and 1.6 supercharged, the supercharger will give you in the real world driving a lot of oomph also at lower RPMs, which is a very nice addition. Also supercharger has that little bit of supercharger whine sometimes, especially if your car is less insulated, you will hear this. In tuning, the best way to extract achievable, easy cheap power is with the turbocharged setting. If you already have a turbocharger, just adding a chip will not only result in the fuel map optimization, but also air influx, so the turbo pressure. Superchargers are a little bit harder to chip tune, but can also offer quite some gains. Also here you can do something with different supercharger pulleys to give you a lot more power. So for example, a smaller pulley will give more pressure often, whereas with the naturally aspirated engine you cannot do that much, about 6 to 10% returns, which is still nice, but it's not a lot. Hey, jongen. Goedemorgen. Goed zo. Goed hè? Steun netjes naast hè? Kom eens bijtje. And if you already have a naturally aspirated engine and you're seeking power, often the way to go is forced induction. So go adding a turbocharger or supercharger on the engine that you already have. In that case, the supercharger is an easier fix because it's often quite a lot plug and play, because you don't have to exchange the exhaust system that much, because you don't have to put in between a turbo. And often this is custom work. You just add an additional blower that will feed the air in, and then optimize fuel management. So this is an easier way to go. Of course, the turbo way is a lot better, especially if you want to continue building upon your engine. And also it depends a lot how much you want to do to the engine already. Do you want to keep it stock and just have a simple power gain, or do you really want to work on the engine itself so that it can handle a lot more boost? Then it depends on a lot as well. Also, you could get easier access to second-hand turbos often than second-hand supercharger systems, and one should consider that there's also a lot more working time involved to install a supercharger. No, a turbocharger on a naturally aspirated engine than it costs to do a supercharger setup. Also, in modern times, turbos have matured a lot. We also have now hybrid turbos that are in between a big and a smaller turbo. But the best to have twin turbo setups for this, so a small and a bigger turbo to reduce the turbo lag. Goedemorgen. Hey.
Ja. Ja, Luna.
Hoi hoi. So, what happened? The turbo needs some time to spool up, so the enough exhaust gases should already be through the system to give the boost that you want, and it's good to you waiting for the boost to come in, and also could disrupt the power delivery, for example mid corner. When it gets some boost, then you feel a sudden surge of power again. This could be reduced by adding a smaller turbo for the lower RPM range. Then the big turbo gets in for the medium to high RPM range, and both often spool up in the high RPM range so that you reduce that lags. But also modern single turbo setups are quite good at giving a broad range application for power. So one of the big benefits of the Supercharged that gives you the more linear power is now well addressed. And this gives you some of the insights that I wanted to share with you. I also told you that there is an alternative. You see now a lot of cars being equipped with a hybrid system. This is not only for fuel efficiency, but can also help a lot in getting more power to the road. Why? One, it can help in fuel efficiency and thereby allows the use of bigger engines without that much of fiscal or other ways tax related penalties. So for example, if a certain engine could not pass the exhaust criteria on its own, but could pass it with that hybrid engine, it could still be available instead of being reduced from the range. This is especially interesting for performance engines, of course. The other thing is that the electric engine that helps you, so the hybrid system that has electric engine as well, can give you instant power. So an electric engine doesn't need to spool up, and there's a benefit that also in flexibility accelerations, it's nice that you can have like some electrical overboost. Goedemorgen. Hoi hoi, goedemorgen. And so it doesn't give you force induction, but it gives you a lot of torque and additional horsepower at an extremely fast pace. There's also a benefit that this setup could be that you have, for example, a car that's normally only front driven or only rear driven, and if you then add electrical engine at the other dimension that is normally driven, for example, if it's a front driven car and you put the electrical engine at the back, you could have a four-wheel drive car with all the benefits of traction as well. Another thing is that with this setup you can have, when you brake, or you normally that energy is just wasted, and now a part of that energy to be recuperated again, which is a good thing as well. The drawback of this setting is that it adds more weight than the supercharged and turbo setups normally do. And why is that? Especially because the batteries take a lot of weight. If you put a system that doesn't rely that much on battery storage, a very simple hybrid system, the weight difference could be negotiated quite a bit, and for performance setting this could be the optimal range. But the drawback would be that once depleted, and if you're braking very hard, for example track day, the recuperation will be a lot less because you're not engine braking that much, so feeding into the batteries again, but also using a lot of your normal braking systems, which will suffer more because the added weight of the system, even if it's a little, even 10 to 50 kilograms, can already be felt in your racing car or your track day car. I hope this helped you a little bit, and also gave you some things to consider. One point should be made: the real raw fuel of a naturally aspirated engine that revs to the stratospheres is one of the most exhilarating things to just experience. For example, at 1.6 out of my example, it revs to perhaps 10,000 RPM to produce 200 horsepower. Feels really nice once it revs. Really accelerating also has a benefit because it doesn't produce that much of torque. This is normally a drawback, but it could be a benefit if you are going through a bendy area that you don't have a lot of torque steer. The drawback of that 200 horsepower naturally aspirated engine is that it only feels fast when it's on a boil. So you give it the beans, rev it out, whereas the turbo and especially supercharged engine will already feel fast at 3000 RPM or below. I hope you liked this video and have a nice day. Bye bye.